First story by Anonymous. It was a late October evening in 2018, and I found myself drawn to the serene beauty of the woods near my small town in Vermont. The autumn leaves were a brilliant mosaic of red, orange, and gold, creating a picturesque scene that begged to be explored. As an avid nature lover, I had walked these trails countless times, but that evening there was a chill in the air, a foreboding whisper that seemed to rustle through the trees. I set out just before dusk, the sun casting long shadows among the trees. The forest was familiar, yet every step seemed to unveil a new, hidden aspect of its beauty. I was so captivated by the scenery that I barely noticed the sky darkening above me. The trail, usually so clear in my mind, started to blur, and the once welcoming trees now loomed ominously overhead. As night fell, a subtle unease crept into my heart. I had strayed from the main path, lured away by the allure of the forest's heart. The dense canopy above left the ground shrouded in near total darkness. I reached for my phone, only to find it had no signal. Panic began to set in as I realized I was utterly lost. Every sound seemed amplified in the silence of the forest. The crack of a twig, the rustle of leaves, the distant hoot of an owl. Each noise made my heart race. I tried retracing my steps, but in the darkness, every direction looked the same. The forest, once a place of solace, now felt like a labyrinth with no exit. Hours seemed to pass as I wandered aimlessly. The cold began to seep into my bones, and the eerie silence was occasionally broken by strange noises that I couldn't place. Were they animals or something else? My imagination ran wild with the possibilities. At one point, I stumbled upon a small clearing. The moon breaking through the clouds cast a ghostly glow on the ground. That's when I saw it. A figure standing at the edge of the clearing, still and silent. My breath caught in my throat. Was it a person, an animal, or something else entirely? The figure didn't move, and neither did I. We stood there, locked in a silent standoff, until it suddenly turned and vanished into the trees. The encounter left me shaken, and I quickened my pace, desperate to find a way out. Eventually, I came across a small stream. Remembering that water often leads to civilization, I followed it. The terrain grew rough, and I stumbled several times, but the fear of spending another moment in that forest drove me on. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, I saw lights through the trees. Bursting into a clearing, I found myself at the edge of a familiar road. Relief washed over me as I realized I was just a few miles from town. Exhausted, I trudged along the road until I reached the safety of my home. To this day, I'm not sure what I saw in that clearing, and part of me doesn't want to know. I still take walks in the woods, but never again as night falls. That evening taught me a lesson. Nature, as beautiful as it is, holds mysteries and dangers that are best left unexplored. That story was truly a brush with the unknown, wasn't it? But brace yourself, because the next tale dives even deeper into the realms of unexplained mysteries. This next encounter will chill you to the bone. Second story by John Doe. My name is John, and I've lived in a small town in Oregon, nestled between dense forests and rugged hills for most of my life. The woods here are ancient, stretching far and wide, a green expanse that has always been a source of fascination and at times, fear. It was in the summer of 2020, during one particularly hot and sleepless night, that I first heard the noises. They were unlike anything I had ever heard before. A series of low, guttural growls mixed with high-pitched whistles that seemed to ebb and flow with the wind. At first, I thought it might be some animal, perhaps a coyote or a stray dog, but the sound was too strange, too unsettling. Curiosity, alongside a touch of bravado, got the better of me. I decided to investigate. Grabbing a flashlight and my old hunting knife for protection, I ventured into the woods. The night was moonless, the darkness almost suffocating, as if the forest itself was alive and watching me. As I moved deeper into the woods, the noises grew louder and more distinct. There was a rhythm to them, a bizarre melody that seemed almost intentional. My heart pounded in my chest, each step feeling heavier than the last. The rational part of my brain told me to turn back, but the need to know, to understand, pushed me forward. After what felt like hours, but in reality was probably only 30 minutes, I came across a clearing. The noises were louder here, echoing off the trees in a cacophony of sound. That's when I saw it. A small, makeshift cabin hidden away among the trees. The noises seemed to be emanating from inside. I approached cautiously, the beam of my flashlight cutting through the darkness. As I neared the cabin, the door creaked open. A figure stepped out, tall and thin, covered in what looked like rags. The person, if it was a person, didn't seem to notice me. They were chanting in a language I couldn't understand, their voice blending with the strange noises. I hid behind a tree, watching as the figure danced around the clearing, their movements jerky and unnatural. My mind raced with possibilities. Was this some hermit, a cultist, or something else entirely? The air grew colder, and I felt an overwhelming sense of dread. I knew I had to leave, to get out of there as fast as I could. As silently as I could, I began to retreat. Every step away from the clearing felt like an eternity. I kept expecting the figure to follow me, to emerge from the shadows, but they never did. When I finally made it back to the safety of my home, the first light of dawn was breaking. I never found out who or what was in that cabin. I've heard the noises a few times since then, always in the dead of night, but I never went back to investigate. Some mysteries are better left unsolved, and some sounds are better left unheard. Wasn't that a bone-chilling experience? The forest holds secrets that sometimes are better left undiscovered. But the next story is even more unnerving, as it takes us into the heart of darkness in a forest at night. Third story by Jane Smith. I'm Jane, and I've always been an adventurous soul. In the summer of 2019, I embarked on a camping trip in the dense forests of the Appalachian Mountains. I had always found solace in the tranquility of nature, but this trip proved to be anything but tranquil. It was my second night camping in a secluded area. The day had been pleasant, filled with hiking and birdwatching. As night fell, I settled into my tent, the sounds of the forest a natural lullaby. However, it wasn't long before I awoke to a strange feeling of unease. The forest, usually alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, was eerily silent. Peeking out of my tent, I saw nothing but darkness. The air felt heavy, almost suffocating. Then, the silence was broken by a sound that sent chills down my spine. A low, mournful wail that seemed to come from all around me. It was a sound I couldn't place, neither animal nor human. Frightened, I zipped up my tent, hoping it was just a stray animal, but the wailing continued, growing in intensity. It was joined by other sounds, whispers that seemed to float on the wind, unintelligible but unmistakably human. I lay in my tent, paralyzed with fear. The night seemed endless, the strange chorus of sounds playing on a loop. Then, something brushed against my tent. I froze, holding my breath. It felt deliberate, like a hand dragging along the fabric. I wanted to scream, to run, but fear rooted me in place. As suddenly as it had begun, the sounds stopped. The forest returned to its natural state, the nocturnal symphony resuming as if nothing had happened. I didn't sleep for the rest of the night, and as soon as the sun rose, I packed up my camp and left. I've since tried to rationalize what happened, to find a logical explanation. Perhaps it was a group of pranksters, or my imagination running wild. But deep down, I know what I experienced was real, and it's something I'll never forget. The forest, in all its beauty, holds secrets and terrors that are beyond our understanding. That tale sends shivers down the spine, doesn't it? The forest at night can be a mysterious and terrifying place. But our next story brings us closer to home, where even a routine walk can turn into a nightmare. Fourth story by Michael Johnson. My name is Michael, and I live on the outskirts of a small town in Colorado, right at the edge of a sprawling forest. I'm an avid dog lover and have a German Shepherd named Rex. Our nightly walks are a routine, one that I thought was as ordinary as any other, until one fateful night in the fall of 2021. That evening, there was a crispness in the air, signaling the approach of winter. Rex seemed more eager than usual, pulling on his leash as we neared the forest. The trees swayed gently in the breeze, their leaves rustling softly. It was peaceful, or so it seemed. As we walked along the familiar path, I noticed something odd. The forest was unusually quiet. No crickets chirping, no rustling of small animals, just silence. Rex seemed unsettled too, his ears perking up, his pace quickening. We reached a point where the path curved into the denser part of the woods. That's when I heard it. A faint whispering, like voices carried on the wind. I stopped, trying to discern where it was coming from. Rex growled low in his throat, his gaze fixed on the shadows between the trees. Curiosity mingled with a growing sense of unease. I strained to listen, and the whispers grew louder, more distinct. They seemed to be calling my name, beckoning me deeper into the forest. Every instinct told me to turn back, but I was drawn forward, as if in a trance. Rex barked, snapping me out of it, and that's when I saw them. Figures moving between the trees, just at the edge of my vision. They were shadowy, indistinct, almost like wraiths. I felt a cold dread settle in my stomach. Were they people? Spirits? Something else? I didn't stick around to find out. Gripping Rex's leash tightly, I turned and hurried back the way we came. The whispers followed us, a haunting chorus that seemed to mock my retreat. It wasn't until we were well away from the forest that they finally ceased. That night changed everything. I haven't walked near the forest since then, and even Rex seems wary of it. I don't know what I saw or heard, but I do know that there are things in this world that defy explanation. The forest, with all its beauty, hides secrets that are perhaps best left undiscovered. The woods can indeed be a place of mystery and dread. Imagine something so ordinary turning into a spine-tingling encounter. Well, our final story tonight takes us back into the depths of the forest, where the line between reality and nightmare blurs. Fifth story by Emily Davis. I'm Emily, and I've always been fascinated by the mysteries of the natural world. This curiosity led me to a chilling experience one night in 2022 in the dense forests of Washington state. I had heard local legends about strange happenings in these woods, but I never gave them much credence until that night. I was hiking with a group of friends, aiming to reach a known camping spot by nightfall. However, as often happens in the wilderness, we lost our way. The sun had set, and the forest around us was bathed in the ghostly light of the moon. We decided to set up a temporary camp and wait for the daylight. As we sat around our campfire, we heard it, a distant chanting, rhythmic and unnerving. It wasn't like any language I had heard before. Driven by a mix of fear and curiosity, we decided to investigate, moving quietly through the trees. The forest seemed to close in around us as we followed the sound. After what felt like miles, we came upon a clearing. There, we saw a group of people, clad in dark robes, gathered around a large fire. They were engaged in what looked like a ritual, their movements synchronized and deliberate. We hid behind the trees, watching the scene unfold. The figures chanted and danced, their voices growing louder and more fervent. Then they stopped abruptly, as if they had sensed our presence. One by one, they turned to face us, their features obscured by the darkness. The air grew cold, and a sense of dread washed over me. We knew we had to leave, to get as far away from this place as possible. We retreated slowly, trying not to make a sound, but I could feel their eyes on us, watching our every move. Once we were a safe distance away, we ran. We didn't stop until we reached our original campsite, panting and shaken. None of us spoke of what we saw, but it was clear we were all thinking the same thing. Had we stumbled upon a cult or something even more sinister? That experience haunts me to this day. The forest, for all its beauty, can hide darkness and secrets that are beyond our comprehension. I still hike and explore, but I'm more cautious now, more aware of the thin line between the known and the unknown. Tonight's journey through the shadowy realms of the forests has brought us face to face with the unknown. From mysterious sounds to unexplained encounters, each story reminds us that there's so much out there that defies explanation. If you enjoyed these spine-tingling tales, be sure to check out the recommended video on the screen. It's one of my personal favorites and promises even more chills. Thank you for joining me in this exploration of the eerie and unexplained. Until next time, stay safe and keep an eye out for the mysteries that lurk in the shadows.